Hi everybody, my name is John. I'm one of the counsellors here at the Bethesda Addiction Treatment Centre, and welcome to one of our lectures, which I'm recording with the many clients we have. Today I want to explore people's understanding of denial. It's a word that gets bandied around a lot. You hear it in the rooms. Your family's going to challenge you with that word. In here, you're going to hear it, you're in denial. But what does it really mean? And I think it's one of the most misunderstood and also most unaddressed or not given nearly as much attention as it needs in lectures and step work, particularly step work. I look at the step one denial section, and I find it's very vague. I don't think it's got nearly enough, what's the word I'm looking for, insight. And the questions don't nurture enough self-awareness. So this lecture is intended to expand your perception on denial. But denial, what is it and where does it come from? So first question I want to ask you is denial a good thing or a bad thing?
So it's a good thing if you need to come to terms with it in your recovery process.
Don't over answer the question. Just it's a good thing or a bad thing.
I would say it's a bad thing. And why I say it is because it prevents you from taking a step further in accepting the problem that you have.
Okay. You've been in a lot of treatment centers and you've sat in a lot of denial lectures. I want you to try and think outside of all the default answers. Personally, what do you think? T? Okay. See?
Okay, it could be a good thing because you tell yourself and you believe in yourself that you're not responsible for whatever it is. So it kind of calms you down a bit by not taking responsibility of something you're responsible for.
How's that a good thing?
No, for the moment you'll be calm. Like you say, oh, I don't think it's a bad thing that I did it. Like you give yourself some hope. Of, could be a bit of both. I don't know.
Okay. T?
I think it's actually a bad thing in the sense that it prevents you from seeing reality as it is. When you're in denial, you don't see the situation for what it is. So it's a blind spot.
Okay. Is it always a bad thing?
Mostly.
So we've got mixed answers. And you're all right. It's good and bad. Well, where does it come from? Why does it happen? Does it happen only to addicts?
No, I think it happens to almost everyone. Not being able to accept responsibility, take ownership of the things that you have done, specifically wrong.
Specifically wrong.
Yes.
Okay. Where does it come from?
when you don't want to accept things the way they are, like you don't want to accept and move on, you still want to stay in denial. You want to say this hadn't happened, this you know, kind of thing.
Yes, but where does it come from? Does it just pop into existence?
I would say it comes from the past, not dealing with the past.
Or people's perceptions or something.
It comes from your subconscious. It's a defense mechanism. It's an involuntary, often involuntary defense mechanism. It's a blanket-like defense mechanism that comes out of your subconscious. And often it's a good thing. It's a necessary thing. I'll give you an example from personal experience. Towards the end of my addiction, when I was living on the streets, living in crack houses, I took my father on. I never involved my family in my addiction other than I just disappeared for years and years. Nobody knew where I was or how I was. But I took my father on. My father was a very, very sweet, gentle, kind man. And I used fear of my safety to get money out of him because I knew that would work with him. And I did it a few times. I was also on the run from the police. I had absconded from a whole bunch of court appearances, so there were warrants out for my arrest. My father was actually quite a savvy guy, and he found out about the warrants, and I'm not sure how he did it, but he kind of figured out what was going on. And I know that I hurt him. I know that I really, really hurt him. It's something that I didn't want to do, but I did. Desperate for drugs, desperate to use. I took my dad on. I really, really hurt him. I walked into the Ark in Westlake, Cape Town, April 1998. That's where my journey started. And once I'd gone through the detox and my head was a bit clearer and I was starting to feel a bit better, the thing that was eating me more than anything else, what was weighing heavily on my mind more than anything else, was my father, what I'd done to my father. It must have been maybe anywhere between 6 and 10 months from the last time I used, where I was starting to build up the courage to phone my father and try and apologize, try and make some sort of amends. And that day that I decided today's the day I'm going to do it, my correctional supervision officer walked in the front gate. I saw him walk in and I thought, what's he doing here? Why is he here? This is different. Normally they come at night, and it's never him personally. It's always the correctional supervision people. I was under correctional supervision, but this was Mr. Bron, my correctional supervisor, officer. Anyway, he walked in. I was immediately on my guard, like, what's happened now? What's going on now? Maybe are they coming to fetch me, or what's happening? And he walked past me, he nodded at me, he walked past me, and he went straight to the pastor of the section, Pastor Brian, who was in charge of the men's section at that time, and they went into the room, and they were in there for a while. Then Mr. Broaden came out, he walked past me again, he nodded at me, and he left. I thought, what on earth is going on? Pastor Brian called me in, and he sat me down and he said, John, your father's passed away. He died of a massive heart attack. And I felt nothing. Nothing. I got permission from correctional supervision to fly to Johannesburg to go to the funeral. I went to the funeral, beautiful funeral. There were bagpipes and people from all over the world came to my dad's funeral. I sat in that funeral, I felt nothing. I can remember thinking to myself, I must be the worst, most evil person in the world. I mean, I just don't care. What is going on here? I could see lots of other emotional people. Flew back to the ark, nothing, and it haunted me. I was in the ark for 3.5 years. I left the ark, moved into Fishhoek, and through circumstances I met Colin. And Colin started to mentor me. And he was taking me to a rehab that he was running, that he started, called Beth Rafa in Observatory. And I started doing step work, and I started sitting in groups and started presenting step work, and I came into a therapeutic context. And one day, sitting at home, during that time, I think I'd been at Beth Rafa that day, I'd done some step work, I presented step work in group. That day I was feeling vulnerable. I was watching a movie on M called Billy Elliot. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. About a young boy and his son. I mean, a young boy and his father. His father works in the mines. The boy wants to become a dancer. Initially, there's massive resistance from the family, but the family come around, especially the father. Anyway, cut a long story short, at the end of the movie, they're sitting on a low wooden fence in a paddock, and they play fight with each other. They tumble off the back of this fence. And it erupted out of me. This is about 6 years, maybe, give or take. Later, the grief for my father erupted out of me. I mean, like it came from my tips of my toes, I think, because it sounded something like this. And then, woof, 6 years later, I could grieve for the death of my dad. What happened there, which I know now in hindsight, was that I went into denial. My subconscious switched those feelings off. Oof. And thinking back, with the knowledge I have now and the understanding I have now and the recovery I have now, looking at the depth of grief that came out of me that day, had that happened to me back then, when Pastor Brian told me, I don't know if I could have survived that without relapsing. I don't know if I could have coped with that at that stage. I think that would have cracked me into pieces, and very probably be using the same day. That's denial. That's how denial works. Because I'd come into a therapeutic context, because I'd started doing the work, because I was being mentored by Colin, and starting to get in touch with lots of other feelings and emotions, that denial let go. I didn't play a conscious role in any of that. So the question is, why is it so deadly for us addicts? Because it is. Some addicts, some alcoholics never come out of denial, and the addiction kills them.
It pulls wool over my eyes and prevents me from seeing reality.
Yes. But even when there's family interventions and people get forced into, and they come up against people like myself and Colin, who are very adept at getting through denial systems. Why is it still so? And we don't always get through. There's people so stubborn, so unwilling to accept the reality of what's happening to them. It can still kill them. That's a dictionary definition, and you guys have kindly touched on that in the beginning when I was asking you questions. You don't need to write it down. There's a second dictionary definition. It's one of the better ones I've seen. Denial is a psychological process by which human beings protect themselves from things that threaten them by blocking knowledge of those things from their awareness. It is a defense which distorts reality. It keeps us from feeling the pain and uncomfortable truth about things we do not want to face. If we cannot feel or see the consequences of our actions, then everything is fine and we continue to live without making any changes. Very, very academic. I can understand that on an academic level, but it still doesn't make sense to me in a pragmatic sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I struggle, or not. I struggled, and as long as I've been giving this lecture and working in this rehab, I've watched the clients struggle to drop this from your intellect into something personal and practical. That's the danger of this thing, and this is why I think many miss it. Is it clicks for them intellectually, academically. We understand the concept, and then move on because we think, okay, we understand what denial is. We can move on to other things, and I think this is a huge mistake that many make, is that they don't pause here and deepen their understanding and self-awareness of what does this actually mean for you in your life. Like any lecture, like any group that you attend here, All we ever going to give you is a blueprint. Yeah? You understand the concept of a blueprint? If I want to build a house here in Longships Drive, I can't go and build a Spanish castle or a mud hut or whatever I feel like. I've got to go to the town planner and I've got to get a blueprint, a basic blueprint of what the house needs to look like in this area. Yeah? What I put inside there is up to me. I can put as many bedrooms, bathrooms, dining rooms, lounges, whatever, inside there. So it's like that. Every lecture that you attend, you need to afterwards go and sit somewhere with pen and paper and reflect on that information. What does this say about me? What's my version of this? How do I do this? Who do I do this with? Who do I do this to? Okay? You have to do that. If you don't do that, by the next day, you're going to lose a significant amount of that information. By the next week, you're going to, when myself or Colin want to recap on the lecture we gave you last week and we ask you questions, or we ask you, what was the lecture we did last week? Often, most people will say, they can't remember what the lecture was. You've just let it go in there. It's going to get stuck in there with all the other information that you have. You can end up with so much information, you can become spiritually and intellectually constipated. Unprocessed knowledge is like undigested food. If you can eat as much as you want, if your body doesn't digest that food, you'll die of starvation. It's the same with knowledge. You've got to activate what you learn and what you know. You've got to personalize it. Otherwise, you're wasting that opportunity. So this is very much a blueprint I'm going to give you now. We're going to look through denial mechanisms. That's Colin. He's just walked in. You can't see him on camera, so everybody's waving at him. He's going up the stairs. I'm going to give you denial mechanisms. There's a lot. A lot of the terminology I'm using I got from a guy called Terence Gorski. Okay? So when you're allowed back on the internet and you've gone home and you can start downloading material, go look for Terence Gorski. He's considered one of the world authorities on relapse prevention, relapse awareness and prevention. He's got loads of workbooks, loads of books to read. It's all good stuff. It's worth looking at. So remember that, Terence Gorski. So now we're going to look through denial mechanisms. I'm going to give you my interpretation of what it is. You have to then take it and personalize it and see what flavor of this do you use in your life. But remember, the people that are going to be the most battered and the most affected by your denial are the people around you. Okay? Because there's lots of ways we use denial mechanisms. We can use them passively. We can use them covertly. We can use them defensively. And we can use them offensively. You understand? So I can use some of these denial mechanisms like a baseball bat, like a razor, like a scalpel, like a sneak attack. Let's start. I don't know how long this has been going. 25 minutes. There we go. Simple denial. Simple denial. Okay, well, let me do that. Simple denial is, you're an addict. No, I'm not. You've got a problem. No, I haven't. You're out of control. No, I'm not. Sounds simple, but it's formidable, and it contributes to crazy making. Now, when you hear me say it contributes to crazy making, is we make the people around us feel like they're going crazy. Minimizing. We make the problem seem less or smaller than it is. Only every now and again, only do it on weekends, only do it here, only do it there. But I'm not on the hard stuff. I'm only snorting, I'm not injecting. So there's many ways. Okay? Personalize it. How do you do it? Who do you do it with? What does it sound like? Rationalizing and justifying. What's the difference between rationalizing and justifying? What do you think? Listen, you've got lots of time to write this down. Rather pay attention. No.
You rationalize, you convincing yourself that
Yes.
that something that you don't have the issue or don't have the problem. If you're justifying it, you are explaining to someone else why you do not have that problem.
100%. That's exactly it. Rationalizing is self-delusion. It's how I convince myself. Justifying is how I'm going to convince everybody else. Now, that's still too intellectual. In your homework now, you've got to go and personalize that. How do you make it sound okay to yourself? How do you make it sound okay to the people around you? Because you do a lot of justifying. And you won't have to look far for examples. You'll probably find examples for a lot of these denial mechanisms here in treatment, in the rehab. You've used them when you've been challenged by the counselors, when you've been confronted in group, when you've been confronted by each other in your individual spaces. How? So look, you don't have to look far. You're not going to have to look far to start seeing it. Blaming, accusing. What do we blame? Who do we blame?
Everyone.
Self-reflection. Okay? We can blame people, places, things. We can blame anything, anybody. What does blame do? It puts the responsibilities on someone or something else. I'm this way because of that. In other words, if that stops, if that goes away, if that changes, then I'll be okay. And the reality is that will never happen. Okay? No matter how sensible you think your blaming is. And even if you've actually got legitimate people to blame, you've been in an abusive relationship or a work situation or whatever, there might be some credibility in what you're blaming and who you're blaming. And it's that credibility that makes it so powerful, because we can convince ourselves, we can convince others that that's why we can't change, why we have to use, why we can't stop using. It's very powerful, and it's something that you need to really, really look at and pay attention to. Who are you blaming? You might have an unbendable, unbreakable denial mechanism there. Especially if you are a victim of something. You have been hurt, you have been abused, you have been taken advantage of. Here's where you've got to risk self-honesty. And maybe tell the story in group or to your counselor. And maybe start a process of coming away from that blaming. Diversion. It's another great denial mechanism. What do you think diversion means?
Take the attention off the topic at hand.
What's a great diversion statement? How many times have you heard yourself say this? No, but you. No, but what about you?
Yeah.
How many times have you heard that say that in an argument, in a fight?
What about you?
You know, when your wife's trying to confront you about your behavior or your children or something. No, but you. And we know exactly what to say and how to say it and when to say it. We know exactly where to put that knife. Okay? Take a risk, tell the story. How have you purposefully, intentionally hurt people with the no but you statement? Bargaining. Well, if you stop being such a nag, I'll stop drinking so much. How and who do you bargain? Who do you bargain with? What does it sound like? What are your bargaining chips? Again, risk the self-honesty. Passivity.
Question.
Yes.
On bargaining, if somebody tells you like, why don't you stop drinking?
Yeah.
And then you tell them, but if you stop drinking, I'll also stop drinking.
Yeah.
Like maybe both of us should just stop drinking and everything is okay. Is that also bargaining?
Yes, that can be bargaining. Passivity. Just never taking responsibility for anything. Yes, disagreeing. Yes, no, yeah, I know, I will. It's formidable and it contributes to crazy making. Okay? Because it could literally drive people crazy. The people around us. Hostility, violence, sulking, punishing. There's a lot of ways we can do this. Let me demonstrate an act of violence to you. Okay? Sulking. Sulking is an act of violence. It's violent behavior. Think about it. Have you had somebody sulk with you? How does it feel when somebody sulks with you?
Very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable, yes? What does it do? It immediately puts you on eggshells, doesn't it? You stop, you know? Can even push you into being angry and resentful. Yeah? Well, when we do it, it's next level. We can do it for months. We dictate the atmosphere of the home. The second we enter a room, everybody's on edge. Everybody's on eggshells. Everybody's scared. We can break things, throw things, punch holes in things. What are we saying? What are we demonstrating when we do that? How many of you have done that? Where you break things, punch holes in things, slam things. Yeah? What are you saying when you do that? What's the message?
Look at me, getting attention.
No. If you don't back off, I might do this to you.
And one of silent treatments.
Yeah. The silent treatment, big time. It's punishing. We punish people with silence. How else can we punish people? We can withdraw what? Love, affection, sex, money, attention, intimacy. This is all hostile behavior, violent behavior. Okay? And it does damage. It does a lot of damage. In fact, many of those people around us that we claim to love more than anything in the world will often have post-traumatic stress as a consequence of this kind of denial mechanism in play. This is what I mean by an offensive denial mechanism. You know, soldiers that go to Afghanistan, they do a year, a tour, they call it a tour, which is a year. And then they come home. Most of them will come home with degrees of post-traumatic stress. This is the same thing, what we're doing to our families. So what's the common denominator? What's the hallmark of post-traumatic stress?
Hostility.
Yes. Not the answer I'm looking for. It's hypervigilance. You understand what hypervigilance is? With a soldier on the battlefield, in a combat situation, they can never rest. They can never relax. They can never not be alert. They go everywhere with their rifle. They sleep with their rifle. They go to the toilet with their rifle. Okay? They never know where the snipers are, where the next ambush is going to be, where the IEDs are. So that's a year that they're on the edge. That hypervigilance has a massive toll on a person emotionally, mentally, and psychologically. And you could, as I could be wrong, I stand to correction here, but that I don't think you can switch that hypervigilance off. I think once it's there, it's there. I think maybe it can diminish in intensity a bit, but I think it'll always be there. My hypervigilance has never gone away. Now our families have hypervigilance around you. Every time the phone rings, every time there's a knock on the door, they can't sleep, they can't eat. They're obsessively worried about you from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep. All day, every day. Now these soldiers only go for a year to Afghanistan. Our families, for some of us, have been on the front lines for years. 3, 6, 10, 12, I don't know. You think about it. How long have you been Bang at it. That's how long your family's been on the front line with you. So think about that. Very, very important. This has got to go in your step work. When you start doing step work, you need to start talking about the damage that you've done. Because it's significant. It's much more significant than you realize. This is where the denial will be the strongest in a person. You know, in the back of our minds, we kind of know we might be addicts. We know we're out of control. We know we've crossed a few lines. We know we've pushed it too far. And we minimize that. But where we're the most in denial is in how much damage we've done to the people we claim to love. That's where, in my opinion, that's where the denial is the absolute thickest. And when you go into your step work, you got to start talking about this, because at some point this has got to break your heart, what you've done to the people around you. It's got to really break your heart, It's got to be part of that depression that Colin talks about in his lectures. And if you look at the addiction V of Colin, you'll see right on the top right hand side there, you'll see depression. It's the gateway to recovery. Well, that's a significant portion of what this depression is the understanding of how bad it's been for them and the role you played in it. Projection. I project all my negativity, my negative feelings, my negative self-worth onto everybody around me. Affiliation or splitting. This is another one that does a lot of damage. Affiliation is where I will go and get people on my side. I'll go and look for allies within the family. I might get 2 or 3, I'll manipulate 2 or 3 or more, or whatever, members of my family to support my position against the antagonizer. And the antagonizer is who? The person that's confronting me about my addiction, the person that's not being fooled by my manipulation and my behavior and my denial mechanisms. So now I'll get people on my side. Another word for it is splitting. Other terminology is we create a drama triangle. And we can get people, we can get the members of our family in significant conflict with each other, where the attention no longer is on me. It's absolutely family annihilating potential. Many families, many addiction families implode under this. And we all do it. And many of you do it here in treatment. You'll come into treatment and you'll try and split the counseling team. Good luck with that. It ain't going to work. Undoing. And this comes from a place of defensive hope. You know what defensive hope is? Your family members are trying to hope you into recovery. If they just hope hard enough, you'll change. And undoing comes from that place where, in a desperate attempt to try and fix you, they'll give you many insincere or maybe even sincere affirmations. Oh, but you're so intelligent and you're so clever and you're so good with your hands and you're so handsome. You've heard this. What do? We undo it. No, not. No, I'm useless. No, I'm rubbish. And it sounds minor, but it isn't. It contributes to crazy making. It contributes to depression with them. It just pushes them further and further into the negative, there's no hope space that they eventually get to with your behavior. Extreme exasperation. Intellectualizing or generalizing speaks for itself. We'll just keep it all up here. We'll be vague about everything, never get specific about anything. Some people take it next level where they'll really study whatever information they get from the lectures, the rehab, the big book, and they'll mine it not for information but for flaws and contradictions and loopholes and formidable. Comparing, judging, we look at other people worse off than us. Well, at least I'm not in the gutter. Well, at least I'm not selling my body on the streets. At least I'm not doing this. You've all done this. And every time you're missing a crucial word, you need to add a word to that. Yet. Not done that yet. If you don't get out of this, you're going to find out, like I found out, that there's absolutely no limit to my depravity. Absolutely none. Every line I thought I would never cross, I crossed. Illuminations of understanding. This is a colonism. IOUs, he calls them. Formidable. Can push you straight back into denial. Happens a lot on step one with many people. Aha moments, light bulb moments. Why are those dangerous?
Because you understand it, yet you don't feel it.
Well, yes, but what we do is we'll turn it into a spiritual awakening. Ah, that's what I did wrong. I just won't do that again and everything will be fine. Straight back into denial and the rest of your program becomes lip service. Because you've made up your mind that this is the thing. You just need to change that. And you leave treatment under a deadly illusion that you're in recovery. But all you've done is you've seized on an IOU or two, turned it into a spiritual awakening, stopped paying attention, stopped personalizing everything, you've gone through the motions. Watch it happen here. We watch it. IOUs are just IOUs. That's it. They're not spiritual awakenings. Everything is okay now that everything is okay. Speaks for itself. I come to treatment. I've gone through my detox. I'm starting to eat 3 square meals a day. I'm going to the gym. I'm feeling better. And I judge myself in that moment. I've never felt this better. Maybe I've forgotten. I've been in the storm of my addiction for so long. I've forgotten what feeling normal is. So I've started to feel normal, and I think that wow, I've never felt this good before. No, I don't need to stay longer. No, I don't need to do the extra month. No, I don't need to. No, I'm fine. Recovery by fear. I convinced myself that fear of future consequences can keep me clean. Let me tell you that if that was true, there would be no need for rehabs. Fear of future consequences never kept a single person, never kept a single addict or alcoholic clean, since there were alcoholics and addicts. Strategic hopelessness. I say to myself, since nothing works, I don't have to try. Oh, AA didn't work for me. Oh, I tried rehab, it didn't work for me. Bull dust. I challenge anybody that comes through these doors into this treatment center to approach this program with a whole heart and not change. To do this with as much honesty and integrity and wholeheartedness and willingness. I challenge anybody to do that and not change as a result of this program. If you've come into this treatment and not changed by the time you've left, that's not a reflection of the program or a reflection of the rehab. That's a reflection of you. Very probably the counselors, the lectures, whatever, couldn't get past your ego or your arrogance or your self-righteousness. The democratic disease state, I have the right to destroy myself. Sounds silly, it's formidable. How do you argue against that? Compliance. What is compliance?
Agreed.
Can I give you a demonstration? Gee, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I've never quite heard it that way before. Absolutely. Compliance. Manipulated medical license. We're nearly done. So my practice is going to be to get this down to 45 minutes. Manipulated medical licenses. I go to the doctor and get a script. And then when I get challenged, I've got a prescription. No, wrong. You have to be honest with your doctors and your pharmacists. I've been in treatment. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a heroin addict. I'm a methamphetamine addict. Please take that into consideration when you're making a prescription for me or you're giving me over-the-counter medication. Just because you've got a script does not mean you can use. You know that you can't use. If you're attempting this, you're not in recovery. You're in an illusion of recovery. Humor, turn everything into a joke, get everybody laughing, become the mascot in the rehab, become the mascot at home. You know, wow, what a fantastic guy. You get lots of those in here, lots. Global thinking, start using terms like always and never, speaks for itself. Start paying attention to when you're making excuses. No such thing as always or never. Uniqueness, the old timers call it terminal uniqueness, thinking that you're special or different. You're the only one. Avoidance by creating an uproar or distraction. Drama speaks for itself. Hopelessness, helplessness, manipulative behavior. Compartmentalizing. This is a formidable one. What is compartmentalizing?
To divide into little pieces and portions.
So I look at areas of my life that are functional and working. Paying my rent, I'm paying my bills, I'm showing up. My life's working, I can't be an addict. And you can very much be an addict. Just a very clever one that knows how to compartmentalize. But even that will eventually fail. It will escalate to a point where even that will become beyond your control. Last one, crazy making, guilt tripping. This is where we make people feel guilty for confronting us. Where we will often react with indignation when we get accused of something. My watch is missing. Did you take it? Me? What, me? I can't believe you would think I would steal that from you. Meanwhile, the watch is in your pocket. Let me help you look for it. Formidable. Okay, so there's a lot, and there's more. There's many more denial mechanisms people can use. The object of this was to try and help you to broaden your perception and understanding of how big this is and how much attention it actually deserves. Much more than maybe you've given it previously. You've got to look at your denial mechanisms. Every denial mechanism you successfully identify within yourself, you'll never use successfully again. Because a lot of these denial mechanisms are automatic piloting. We don't even have to think about them. We've got a whole barrage of denial mechanisms locked and loaded to get fired at anybody in any direction to address any situation, any challenge. I mean, we don't have to think very hard about our denial mechanisms. We don't get challenged by somebody and they say, just pause. I'm going to go and sit over here for 5 minutes and think of my defense. No? Do we do that? No. When people try to get between us and our addiction, they're like this. So, every denial mechanism you identify in yourself is one less. Get it?
Yeah.
So the homework is, right now, or actually we're going into our step work session. We'll start at 10 minutes later. Time for coffee and all of that. The homework now is to try and identify at least 5 of these mechanisms you've used in the last few weeks. or since you've entered treatment that you've used here in the rehab? Or prior to coming to the rehab? Think about the interventions that have taken place in your life recently, which maybe motivated you to coming here. How many of these were in play? How many did you try? Get specific. This is homework now. It's important. And those of you that are watching this later at home, if this ever gets uploaded, that's your homework as well. Thanks. Long lecture. I'm going to try and make the next one a bit shorter. Thank you for attending. Bethesda out.